Hey, what's up guys, DarkArmedDuelist, and today doing a Predaplant deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys because we got some amazing support for this deck out of Dimension Force, which just takes this deck to a whole new level. Even giving us a new boss monster, Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon, which is just an absolutely insanely powerful boss monster. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name scripture every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to our Patreon, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Predaplant Orthoscorpio. Orthoscorpio is one of the best cards in the entire deck, because it has the ability, if it's normal or special summon, you can send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then special summon any Predaplant monster you want from your deck, except another copy of this card, which is a great effect to get any of your Predaplants that you need out on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Darling Cobra, which is going to be the card you're usually going to summon off your copy of Orthoscorpio that has the ability, if it's special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, you can add a polymerization spell card or a fusion spell from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect to search all sorts of different fusion spells that you need in this deck. We then play 2 copies of Sundew. Sundew is a great 2-of. I did consider playing 3 copies of this card, but it's a great 2-of in the deck. It has the ability that monsters with Predacounters that you use as fusion material are treated as dark. And then during your main phase, you can fusion summon a dark fusion monster from your extra deck using this card on the field and monsters from your hand field and or monsters with Predacounters your opponent controls as fusion material. And you can only use this effect of this card once per turn. That is a great effect that you pretty much have a walking super poly as long as monsters have Predacounters on it, which a lot of the cards in this deck now give Predacounters, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of the new Predaplant Bibelist. This card is a really insane new card for the deck that has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Predaplant monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. And if a monster with a Predacounter is on the field, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. This card is absolutely insane because there's so many different cards that send this card to the graveyard to give you searches, so this card is a definite 3-of for the deck. We then play 3 copies of the new Scale Zero Predaplant monster. This card is great for the deck and one of the best new support cards that we actually got, because it has a pendulum effect that during your main phase you can fusion summon a dark fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your field or hand as fusion materials, which is really good that you basically have another copy of polymerization. But it also has the ability that it's a monster effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard or added to your extra deck face up because it was used as fusion material, then you can add one face up dark pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, which is a great effect for this card to have, to be able to grab pendulum monsters back from your extra deck to your hand to use as additional materials for fusion summons. We then play 2 copies of the new Scale 8 Predaplant monster. This card is really good for the deck as well, because it has the ability, while this card is in your pendulum zone, if you fusion summon a dark fusion monster, you can also use cards in your pendulum zone as materials on the field, as material for the fusion summon, which is really good for this deck, to also be able to use your cards in your pendulum zone to be able to fusion summon out your powerful boss monsters. But it also has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard or added to your extra deck face up, because it was used as fusion material, then you can choose monsters on the field up to the number of monsters you control and place one Predacounter on each of them. And if you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1 as long as they have Predacounters, which is really good to use, especially against XZ decks and Synchro decks, because it's going to mess up a lot of their plays. We then play 3 copies of Lone Fire Blossom. Lone Fire Blossom is great in the deck because it gets us to any of our Predaplant monsters that we need, which is really nice by just tributing this card. We then play 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz. Fallen of Albaz is a great card in this deck because it's a walking super poly, and it also works with our copies of Branded Fusion that we're playing in the deck to go into all sorts of extremely powerful fusion monsters. We're then playing 2 copies of Edgem Chain. Edgem Chain is really good because it can be searched with your copies of Ferrite for Patchwork, which will also give you a copy of your Polymerization, which is really good. And this card also has the ability that if this card is sent from your hand or field to the graveyard, then you can add a Ferrite for card from your deck to your hand, which is going to add us our copies of Ferrite for Patchwork to get additional searches, which is really good. We then play a final copy of the Light Hex Seal Fusion. This card is really good for the deck to go into your copy of Albion to help you go into Dragoon, which is really nice in this deck to be able to make such a powerful fusion monster with all the different tech cards that we're playing. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is just a really good card in the deck to be able to bring out all sorts of monsters from the extra deck by just paying 1,000 life points. We're then playing a single copy of Ultra Polymerization. Ultra Polymerization is a really good combo piece for the deck. It has the ability that you just pay 2,000 life points to fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using two monsters that you control as fusion material. And neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation, which is a crazy powerful effect. This card is pretty much a speed spell for fusion spell that also has the ability you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target a fusion monster that was fusion summoned with this card's effect, and then you special summon back both the materials to your side of the field, but change your attack to 0, which is a pretty good effect to just give you your monsters back on the field so you can go in for additional fusion plays. We then play two copies of Polymerization. Polymerization is really good in the deck, but you really only need two copies of this card with all the other fusion spells that we're playing in this deck. Plus, it's searchable off your copies of Right for Patchwork, which is why I'm just playing two copies of it in this build. We then play two copies of Predaplant. Predaplant is a card that I really wanted to play as a 3 of in the deck, but I ended up cutting it down to 2 with all of the other cards that I'm playing in the deck. If you don't want to go into your copies of Dragoon, you can drop the copies of the Light Hex Seal Fusion out of the deck to play a third copy of this card, but it is a really good 2 of in my build, and I really like it at 2 because it has the ability that lets you special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand, and then you can add a Preda card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. Also, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters, which is not that big of a deal because that's pretty much all we're summoning anyways. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization is an insanely powerful fusion spell that lets us use monsters from either player's field to fusion summon into crazy powerful fusion monsters, which is really nice because it can out just about any card on the board, and plus this card is a speed spell 4 that neither player can respond to, which is really awesome. We then play 3 copies of Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion is an insanely powerful fusion spell for the deck that lets us fusion summon a fusion monster that mentions a Fallen of Albaz as a material from your extra deck using 2 or more monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. And you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card, which is totally fine because that's all we're summoning anyways. We then play 3 copies of Right for Patchwork. Right for Patchwork is really good in the deck because it lets us add a Polymerization and a copy of a Edgemp monster from our deck to our hand, which is really good because it adds Edgemp Chain from our deck to our hand and Polymerization to get us all sorts of really awesome plays and let us go in for some really powerful fusion monsters. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Branded Banishment because it's going to be searchable off our copy of Albion. And this card is just really good in the deck because it's basically a monster reborn in trap form, which is really good because it lets us target a Despia monster or a level 8 or higher fusion monster in our graveyard and special summon it. And then you can apply this effect to fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from either player's field, which is really good that this card is basically a monster reborn and a super poly wrapped into one card that's searchable off our copy of Albion, which is absolutely insane. We then play 2 copies of Predaplant. Predaplant is really good in this deck. I played 2 copies of it because I don't want to see it too much in the deck because it is a trap card, but it's really good and super searchable. As the ability, you send a Predaplant monster from your deck to the graveyard and then place 1 Preda counter on each face-up monster on the field. And if you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1, also as long as they have Preda counters on them. And also it has the ability that if you fusion summon a dark fusion monster, all those cards in the graveyard except during the damage step, you can manage this card from the graveyard and then target 1 card on the field and destroy it. And you can only use each effect this card once per turn. This card is a card I actually considered playing it as a 3 of in the deck, but I ended up cutting it down to 2 because of all the other tech cards I'm playing in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Starving Venom Preda Power Fusion Dragon. This card is absolutely insane and a gorgeous new boss monster for the deck. This card takes a Dark Fusion monster plus any other fusion monster to summon this card, which is really good, especially against the Despia branded matchup, because you can use Super Poly to go in this card super easy. It also has the ability, this card is always treated as a Predaplant card, which is really handy for the deck. It also has the ability that once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can tribute a monster on the either field with a Preda counter on it, and if you do, negate the activation of that monster, which is a really good effect to be able to use to be able to just negate the activation of a card by tributing one of your opponent's cards that has a Preda counter on it. It also has the ability, if this fusion summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, then you can target a dark monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. This card is absolutely insane in the deck and just a really powerful boss monster for this build. We're then playing a single copy of Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon. This card is a really good boss monster for the deck too. It takes a Predaplant monster plus a dark monster whose original level is 8 or higher, so it's pretty easy to actually summon this card, but it's a really good boss monster to step into after you summon out your copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, because it's just such a powerful card, because it must be fusion summoned, and then once per turn, you can target a face-up monster on the field until the end phase of this turn, changes attack to 0. Also, that target has its effects negated, and this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard. You destroy as many monsters on the field as possible, then you can manage a level 8 or higher dark fusion or dark monster from your graveyard and special summon this card from the graveyard, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon is just such a good card in this deck to be able to Super Poly out to your side of the field. It's just such a good combo piece for this build. We play a single copy of the Predaplant that takes 3 dark monsters. This card is absolutely insane in this deck because it works so well with our Preda counters, because it has the ability that gains attack equal to total original attack of all other monsters on the field with Preda counters. So this card can get absolutely massive. It's a great Super Poly target, and it just takes 3 darks to summon this card to your side of the field. But it also has the ability that you can only use each of the following effects this card once per turn, that when your opponent special summons a monster from their extra deck while you control this fusion summon card, quick effect, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster or monsters. And if your opponent controls a monster with a Preda counter, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard in defense position, making this card come out over and over again back from the grave, which is absolutely insane. We're then playing 2 copies of the new Predaplant Fusion Monster. This card is insanely good and probably the best new support card that we got out of Dimension Force, and it has the ability, just takes any 2 Predaplant monsters to summon this card, so it's super easy to summon the deck. And if this fusion summon card, or if this card is fusion summon, you can add a Preda card or a Predaplant monster from your deck to your hand, which is really good to be able to just add spells and traps or any of your monsters that you need that are Preda cards. And it also has the ability that you can target one monster that your opponent controls with a Preda counter on it, or one monster that you control and tribute it, and if you do, special summon one Predaplant monster from your deck, which is really good to get the exact cards that you need on your side of the field. We then play 2 copies of Dracostapelia. Dracostapelia is really good because it can put Preda counters on cards. So this card is a really good combo piece because it has the effect that once per turn, quick effect, you can target a face-up monster that your opponent controls and you place a Preda counter on it, and if it has a level that's 2 or higher, it becomes a level 1 as long as it has a Preda counter, and you negate the activated effects of your opponent's monsters that have Preda counters. This card is a really good floodgate for the deck. We then play a single copy of Chimera Afflasia. Chimera Afflasia is just a good card to summon in the deck that can get absolutely massive on your side of the field and helps you go in for a game. We play a single copy of Guardian Chimera as well. This card is an insanely powerful boss monster for the deck that can pop cards and let you draw cards, and it's just a really good card to be able to summon in the deck. We then play a single copy of Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is really easy to go into in this deck with Branded Fusion. It's just a really powerful card overall that just helps you out in so many different plays. We then play a single copy of Lubellion. Lubellion is just a really good card as well for the branded package, so we play it as a one-of. And then we play 2 copies of Albion. Albion is really good to help us go into Dragoon, and it also has the ability that if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can add to your hand or set a branded spell or trap directly from your deck, which gets us Branded Banishment, which is a insanely powerful card to be able to play in the deck. We finally play a single copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon because it's super easy to go into this card with Albion, and it's a really powerful fusion monster to be able to make in this deck. So, that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. It's a super fun deck to be able to play around with, and it's really awesome that the majority of the cards that were actually printed in Dimension Force were commons for this deck, which is just really cool, besides our copy of Starving Venom Predapower Dragon, which is the only holo card that we actually got out of Dimension Force for this deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.